Hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Express. I'm Neena Gopal. This is New Indian Express's weekly interaction with experts, where we analyze the impact of developments in our backyard, on our neighborhood, and on India. Do click on the New Indian Express website and tweet and follow Global Express. So, on day 2 of this historic truce in Gaza, Hamas has so far released 24 hostages, of whom 13 are Israelis. The youngest is a 2-year-old, the oldest is an 85-year-old woman, along with 3 other 70-year-olds. Chilling. Israel has released 39 prisoners, 15 of whom are teenagers. Over the next 3 days, another 26 hostages will be released by Hamas. They're saying 14 more on Saturday. And there's talk that the ceasefire could be extended. The guns have fallen silent in Gaza after 7 whole weeks. But both sides are saying that war will resume after the hostage prisoner swap is done. Is that a possibility? How should Gaza be handled post this ceasefire? As Israel says, it will, the war could last for another 2 months. Will that test the limits of US and European support for the war on Gaza? And the most intriguing of all is the role played by Qatar and Egypt, and of course, Washington. The 3 weeks of secret talks that has resulted in this dramatic breakthrough. Talking to us today is Ambassador Arthur Lenk, former Israeli ambassador to South Africa, Lesotho, and Swaziland. He had warned some weeks ago of the potential that right-wing elements had to wreck the Abraham Accords, the normalization of Israel's relations with its Arab neighbors. But nobody saw the Hamas wrecking ball coming. Welcome, Ambassador Lenk. And an equally big good evening, sir. And an equally big welcome to Ambassador KB Fabian, a former Indian envoy to Qatar. He also spent 3 years in Iran, from 76 to 79, saw the Iranian revolution from the inside firsthand. And as Joint Secretary, Gulf, Ambassador Fabian coordinated the incredible evacuation of over 176,000 Indian nationals from Iraq and Kuwait during 1991. Let's start with you, Ambassador Lenk. Now, after 7 weeks of fighting, there is a pause. But the people who involved were people who Israel designates as terrorists. Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas leader, he was the first one to give a hint that there could be a deal in the offing. And 2 prisoners taken from the kibbutz raids on October 7th did get released. But this current, negotiation is much bigger, much more significant, because it's a deal brokered by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. So my first question, what prompted a terror group like Hamas to agree to the swap? And what prompted the Israeli government to agree to a pauseness in the fighting? I mean, I understand it's because they would want the hostages as home and safe. But it did take the Israeli Prime Minister, several weeks to shift from his stance, saying he wanted to destroy Hamas, before he said that the priority was the hostage release. What do you see happening?
This is a unique weekend in Israel. I've never experienced anything like it. We're all glued to our televisions. We're all watching for signs of life, of our children, of our parents. And a country of 10 million people was moved. We were all crying when we were watching the scenes of our of women in their 80s and babies being reunited with their families. Yeah. And hopefully we're going to get more scenes of like that today and tomorrow and on Monday. But at the same time, we know that nearly 200 Israelis are not coming home this week because they were brutally kidnapped just because they're Israeli. And hundreds and hundreds more were murdered on a holiday in their homes. And that Hamas is still there and still threatens Israelis and Palestinians alike. And until that stops, until that reality changes, we're in a war. And we're in a war that, some of the people who came home yesterday, we use the word home, but they don't have homes. Their homes were destroyed, and they certainly can't go back to where they lived along the border between Israel and Gaza. Can you imagine that there was a part of India that Indians couldn't live? It wouldn't be possible. No country would stand for something like that. And so that's the reality of these two sides of joy and emotion, and understanding that human life, that the people, that our brothers and sisters and neighbors and people we've never met are more important than anything else. But we also know that there's still a mission to carry out, and so that thousands of Israelis soldiers remain on duty in Gaza, because the time will come, and I hope that it doesn't come too quickly, because more and more hostages will no longer be hostages and will come home. But Hamas has to be defeated.
But Ambassador, how do you think that Hamas is then sort of dangling the carrot of more hostage releases? Because what is it that, after these 4 days are over, and you say that 200 more are still going to be held, what these will be male hostages? Will they, you can't negotiate for them? Is there a wall, which has been put up saying the guys who served in the Israeli Defense Forces will not be, part of the deal? Has something like that been said?
Well, certainly it's not our position. We think, and there are billboards all over Israel and signs wherever you go, and flags that say, "Bring them all home now."
Yes, hashtag right. Bring them home.
Right? Hashtag or no hashtag, we need to have our people at home. It's 7 weeks to the day today from that horrific day that no country would let go by. No country would agree to just stop and reserve and continue a situation that exists, where Hamas has been saying again and again that if they get another opportunity, they want to do it again.
But that's exactly what I want to. That's exactly why I asked that first question. Israel is negotiating with terrorists. It is. If you call people who are holding a gun to all these hostages' head, and who destroyed all these kibbutzes that day and killed 1,200 people, and then without even factoring in that Israel would retaliate, and that retaliation has cost the Palestinian people over 130,000 dead. Most of them, 5,000 of them are children. So the dead on the victims are the Palestinian people as much as the Israelis.
Yeah, the Palestinian people are not our enemy. We certainly don't celebrate the death of anyone, Israeli or Palestinian or anyone. But Hamas, for Gaza to be rebuilt, for Palestinians to have a better future, Hamas needs to be out of Gaza, to be out of that leadership. There needs to be a new path, a new way back, so that Israelis and Palestinians can be neighbors again, so that the people who came home yesterday, and hopefully in a few hours today and tomorrow and the next day, will have homes to go to, so that we can rebuild them, and that the border between Israel and Palestine will be a border of neighbors. That's the hope. That's the position of the state of Israel. And if it means being a little bit more patient so that more people can come home, emphasizing the priority of life, of every life.
Yeah,
for Israel.
Absolutely.
Emphasizing that our army stands in front of our civilians to protect them, and not hospitals cover up terrorists to protect them. There's a difference in value of ethos between choosing life that countries like Israel, like India, like the United States, like much of Europe, that have for their people and their and what Hamas has done to the Palestinian people. It's anybody who really cares about Palestinians and who wants better days for them should be standing up to Hamas.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to come to you, Ambassador Fabian. You've served in Qatar. You've been there in the region, back to the region innumerable times. I found it very intriguing the way a Gulf country, a tiny little Gulf country like Qatar, has stepped up and played the role of chief mediator. You know, just as they did with the Taliban, they facilitated the talks with the US Special Envoy, Zalmay Khalilzad. So now they are liaising with the two US Special Envoys, the US Middle East Envoy, Brett McGurk, and the NSA official, Josh Gelser. And they've set up a team. They're dealing directly with the Prime Minister of Qatar, Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani. And they've been briefing President Biden, 13 telephone calls, I believe. So what is it that got Qatar into this game? Did the US appeal to Qatar, or did the Qataris themselves step in and say they would try and cool this war? What was it?
Thank you, Nina. Always a pleasure to be with you and through you with the hundreds of thousands of the followers of this Global Express. Your Global Express is getting longer and longer, meaning
good
train.
God. Thank you.
Before I answer your question,
yeah,
I need to raise one or two observations.
Sure.
You called Hamas a terror group. Well, you might be forgetting that in 2006, they won an election.
They did.
An election which was declared open and fair by the European Union observers. And a Hamas leader was appointed prime minister. And later, President Abbas and Israel and others maneuvered. And that ministry fell, and Hamas took over or retained its control of Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
You might also recall that BBC had refused to call them terrorists.
Yes, that's right.
Now let me make an important point. What Hamas did on the 7th of October is atrocious, and I am even prepared to say it was terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
Harming innocent civilians is terrorism. But that is precisely what Israel has been doing from 7th of October onwards and even before. And to go to the crux of the matter, which most commentators in the West and elsewhere are glad to forget, all this is because of occupation. I will not go to the United Nations resolutions which wanted to create State of Palestine, State of Israel, and the International City of Jerusalem. And the person who wanted to implement it was assassinated by Israelis. Okay, I will not go into all that, but just to remind you and your listeners, King David Hotel, Prime Minister Clement Attlee said these were terrorists. So Israel has a terrorist link. Let's not forget that. But I don't want to dwell on it because Israel, is a great nation. We respect that. And we in India want to be friends with them. But as scholars, it is necessary for us to recall that, So that is one point.
So basically you're saying there's blood on both every side.
Absolutely. And then there is more blood shed, shed by one party because it is infinitely more powerful. So don't, sort of say that, there's an equivalence. And then you said, Nina, that these terrorists are holding a gun to the head of the hostages. No, beg to differ. These hostages who have come out have said that they were properly treated. They were in good health. You remember that?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the men.
Pardon?
We don't know what's happened to the men. The women and children were treated well.
Well, I'm saying that those who have come out.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Now let's not prejudge the others.
That's true. So, but tell me, but it's still required. It still saw the Al Thani family reaching out to Hamas to broker this deal.
Yeah.
It's still, was it because they were prompted into doing it? I mean, they already got those two, that mother and daughter, Natalie and Judith Ranan, released on October 23rd. So that was in the offing. It showed that the Qataris trusted Hamas, and that Biden trusted Qatar, to be able to get the Hamas to get the hostages out.
Okay. Now, to answer your question, Qatar was not prompted by anyone. When I was ambassador there, I remember the Sheikh, who is the grandfather of the present ruler, telling my minister, all on a sudden, that send a delegation from India, we will get a delegation from Pakistan, we'll put them up in a nice place, in a palace, and they don't get out till they have resolved the Kashmir problem. Qatar has an interest in resolving problems, and Yusuf correctly said about Taliban and all that. Okay, so it is there. Qatar wishes to play a role in mediating disputes and preventing them from, escalating into war, or if they have escalated, to sort of de-escalate. You see, and as regards President Biden, well, he had no option but to ask Qatar, or to cooperate with Qatar, to put it in, more balanced.
Why would he choose Qatar over Egypt?
I said he had no other choice. Now let's understand about Hamas. You said that they are friends with Hamas and all that. Yes, they are talking.
Ismail Hania lives in Doha.
No, I know, but they are talking to Qatar. And if Qatar has to talk to the Hamas, well, then they have to have somebody to talk to, no?
Correct.
So that he lives, and this propaganda that, he's living in 7-star luxury, that's all rubbish. Okay? So Qatar is doing the right thing, and all of us should be grateful to Qatar. And this has happened despite Prime Minister Netanyahu's, what shall I say, being obstinate. Okay? So despite all that has happened, we should be grateful to Qatar, and let us hope there will be more hostage release. But as you yourself hinted, the Hamas will just keep the Israeli military personnel. And then, but I don't think that is what is going to, the full story. Full story is that Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that they want to eradicate Hamas. Now let's get it right. Can you eradicate Hamas? Is Hamas an organization, or is it an idea? And the ambassador said very correctly that, Israelis who are near the border cannot go home because, it's destroyed and it's unsafe. That is how many? And compare that with the thousands, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who have been rendered homeless.
Displaced, 1.7 million.
So my point is a little attention to figures is always, desirable. So let's have a balanced look at it, and let us hope that humanity will find a way of resolving, and there will be a two-state solution, though I should say that the West is now mouthing it, and I don't think they are serious about it. And coming to one more last point, the support in the West, from the West for Israel, well, that has peaked and it is going down. You know that Spain is going or has recognized the state of Palestine, and Belgium asked for a ceasefire, and Tel Aviv is, to put it mildly, slightly upset. So that is where we are.
That's true. All right, if I can come back to you, Ambassador Leng. Firstly, what is it that made Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finally agree to the hostage swap? Because it did take a good amount of time. I mean, negotiations with Hamas through Qatar went on for 3 weeks. There were messages going from Doha to Washington and Cairo to Gaza. And finally, William Burns, I think, met the Mossad chief and the Amir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim, until they've managed to get Hamas to agree to, sort of release a list of names. It took a long time. So for Netanyahu to actually tell McGurk, I believe, we need this deal. So what do you think? I mean, was it public opinion? Was it the great grief and the feelings of the the Israelis that finally got him to understand that he has to put the hostages first over the destruction of Hamas?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I don't know that there's a disconnect between these two goals. Israel remains with the two goals of removing Hamas and bringing all of our people home. But this isn't a cooperation deal. This isn't a deal of equals. This is civilians spirited away from their homes, not in occupied land, right? These are not, there is nobody other than Hamas, by the way, who sees the most part of Israel as certainly the southern part or the northern border where people have been displaced because of Hezbollah as occupied territories. But Hamas does. Hamas, right? When they say from the river to the sea, what they mean by that is no more Israel, that all of Israel is occupied territories. So the debates about a two-state solution, about whether this government or that government is more apt to make peace between Israelis and Palestinians is irrelevant for Hamas. And I found it interesting that Ambassador Fabian correctly said that what happened on October 7th was terrorism. He's right, of course. And so people who commit terrorism are terrorists. It's pretty straightforward. It's not complicated. And I think that many countries around the world understand that simple connection. If you do terrorism, you're terrorists.
But is Prime Minister Netanyahu being arm twisted then to a certain extent, because he has to bring the hostages home, but he also has to do a deal with Hamas, and so all that will be on hold. I mean, the destruction of Hamas or the war against the Hamas in Gaza is going to definitely be on hold.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a past in your country. My first diplomatic post as a young diplomat was in New Delhi.
I remember.
And one of the things I learned to appreciate about your people is that both of us, Jews and Indians, we're ancient people that have a law that we judge history, not in the 75 years since independence, but years in the thousands. And we're a patient people. And we know what's really important. And right now, we need to send a message to everyone, to ourselves, to the world, that what's most important are 85-year-old women and 3-month-old babies and Thai field workers and Filipino caretakers who were and women who were raped and men that were murdered and houses that were burned within 1948 Israel, again, not occupied territory, and not soldiers, right? Hamas claimed for the first days, no, it was only soldiers. But this 85-year-old woman who came home yesterday, she wasn't a soldier, she was a grandma. She still is, and thank goodness she's reconnected with her children and grandchildren, and we need more of that. And
but do you also feel that the mood of the world is sort of, shifting a little bit, because there are protests happening across the world. There is a wave of sympathy for the Palestinians post the bombings of Gaza. I mean, does that worry the Israelis at all? Because, as much as we all sympathize with what happened, to these completely, innocent people, there is also sympathy for the Palestinians who are, who caught in the middle, who haven't really supported Hamas.
I share those sympathies, and hope for better days for my Palestinian neighbors, and hope that we create a reality that allows for rebuilding. And so there's a sympathy between that we have for our neighbors, and hope for better days for them. But that can't come. But when you build terror infrastructure under hospitals, you fire rockets from within schools, and say the words that death of our own people is a blessing, that's bad for Palestinians. The Palestinians.
Why didn't the Israelis government see it coming? I mean, it's gross negligence, don't you think? Or it's some blindness. I mean, it's like our blindness on 26/11, and America is on 9/11. Who's going to be held responsible for this intelligence failure? Will Netanyahu pay a price?
Well, firstly, you're totally right. It was perhaps the biggest disaster and security mistake and intelligence failure in Israeli history. It's certainly since the 1973 war. And there is and already leaders from our security establishment have taken on responsibility and know that the day after all of this, they will be gone politically or professionally. And I believe the same may be true for our political leadership. That said, there's work to be done first. We have to get the rest of our people home safely. We have to create a possibility, a future for Israelis and Palestinians alike.
To ensure that Gaza doesn't happen again.
To ensure that it doesn't happen again in Gaza. To make sure it doesn't happen coming from Lebanon, right? Hezbollah, and the word, what's the one word that we haven't said in this whole discussion? Right?
Iran.
Is Iran. Is exactly right. Right?
Yeah.
Halfway between me and you, where we are right now. I'm in Israel and you guys are in India. Iran is in the middle, and they're the one stirring the pot. They're the one doing the funding.
Why are they doing that, Ambassador? What is the game?
Well,
what is the long game?
Well, it's not a game. It's not a game. Do you know that in the United Nations there are 194 countries? There's only one example of one country that calls for the destruction of another member of the United Nations, right? India, you have many disagreements with your neighbor Pakistan, but no Indian representative would ever call for the destruction of Pakistan or vice versa. But
no, we're the same people.
And Jews and Muslims are the same people too. We're cousins. We have so much in common. But the extremism and the nihilism from Iran, from Hamas, from Hezbollah, is a threat to all of us, And India has experience in this as well, tragically. And if we don't stop it, if we don't defeat Hamas, we're sending a message to the next Hamas, to the next ISIS, to the next Boko Haram, that crime pays, that terrorism works. And it could happen in India, God forbid. And it could happen in Paris, or it could happen in New York, or it could happen in London. It has in all of these places. But everyone's watching. The good guys and the bad guys too. And I think we're all watching to ensure that terrorism is defeated, that nihilism is pushed back on, and that a path to coexistence, to rules-based society, to respect for civilians and for life is protected. We're all imperfect. Israel gets lots of things wrong, but our values, our priorities, our vision is one for life and one for coexistence.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Link. I want to go to you, Ambassador Fabian, and ask you about this Arab peace plan, which is happening, because you have, after 30 years of silence, believing it, that the bridges should be built between Israel and Palestinian, authority. All of that had died, So now you have Cairo, Amman, Riyadh, even Turkey, bringing up an updated peace plan, with the Arab states and Arab and Muslim leaders visiting capitals of the United Nations Security Council members. Is there something cooking? I mean, do you think that it's even possible? And India itself hasn't actually put itself out in any way, hasn't offered, even though they are, deeply, respected by both Israelis and Arabs. What do we see? Is there a new Arab peace plan in the making?
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. it has been said now, and it is being repeated many a time in the media, that Hamas does not recognize the existence of Israel. This is historically wrong. Hamas, which was at one point of time funded by Israel, a point of fact which is good to remember, in 2017, they amended their constitution saying that they would accept a state of Palestine along the
1967 borders.
Yes. Okay. So 1967 borders before the war. That means they would accept with West Bank and Gaza. Okay. Now, of course, some people have raised a slogan of from the river to the sea and all that. No, one has to take seriously what is to be taken seriously, and one should not forget historical facts. You see. Now, as regards the Arab plan, well, it is good, but in plain English between you and me, most of these Arab governments do not care for the Palestinians.
They wash their hands off them.
You know that in 47, 48, the Palestinians wanted to have a government, if necessary, in exile, but Egypt and Jordan did not want it because Jordan had its eyes on the West Bank, Jerusalem and all that, and Egypt had its eye on Gaza. So the poor Palestinian people have not had the best of support from the rest of the Arabs. That is point number one. But point number two is that in Israel, there is no serious sort of political force which will support a 1967 border state of Palestine. In fact, we may recall that the defense minister called the Palestinians what?
Yeah, I know. Animals.
Human animals.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So that is where we are. So, and even Biden, when he sort of says two-state and all that, no, they don't really mean it. And of course, the ambassador very correctly pointed out that Iran had openly asked for the destruction of a member state of the United Nations, which is of course wrong. But what Israel is doing, preventing the state of Palestine from being born. You see? So let us hope, that there will be de-escalation and that this dance of death and destruction will come to an early end.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Fabian. Thank you very much for being on the show. Ambassador Lenk, if I can just end this session by asking you what you see as happening in the future, in the next coming weeks, after this 4-day ceasefire and handover, exchange of hostages and prisoners happen.
Yeah, the only comment, the first comment I would make is our defense minister didn't call Palestinians by a name. He called Hamas. It's not quite the same. The Palestinian people are our neighbors. They are not our enemies, and Israel knows how to make peace. It knows how. It's made peace a number of times, right? We have peace with Jordan and with Egypt after going to war with those countries. We have peace with the UAE and with Bahrain and with
Saudi Arabia, which was supposed to come.
And perhaps that was one of the reasons that worried the Iranians and Hamas.
That's true.
So Israel knows how to make peace. It knows how to meet in the middle. It knows how to be generous in agreements, right? You will note that it is not a one-for-one exchange of hostages for terrorists, but we're giving 3 for every 1 Israeli who comes home. It's a respect for life. And by the way, they are not equal people. Again, on one side, there are grandmas and babies, and on the other side, it's people who are convicted of violent crime. Right?
No, some of them, I believe, are children too, among the Palestinians.
No. They are under 18. You are right. But they are not children in the sense that they are 7-year-olds that were playing with Legos. They are 15-year-olds who went and tried to stab to death people in front of schools.
Oh.
Right? So in terms of age, you are right. But by the way, how horrific is that?
It is horrific. I agree.
That children, teenagers, are sent on these kinds of suicide missions to kill other children.
So what do the future hold, Ambassador? It sounds very, it doesn't sound good at all.
Well,
what can we expect?
I apologize, Nina. This is not the most optimistic period of our history. It's a tense, complicated, tragic period. And I think.
And also, will Israel look as if it's taken its foot off the pedal if it allows this Hamas to, sort of extend the ceasefire bit by bit by bit, which is what a lot of commentators have said they will do.
But look, today's the second day. Today's Saturday. Let's see how the next few days come. It will be interesting. There'll be so more to talk about. But I think that it's hard to imagine. It's hard to conceive of a possibility that this would be an end, even if tomorrow, which is what should happen, or today, every single one should come home. Everyone. There's no reason for Hamas to be holding underground in tunnels grandmothers and babies and men. No reason other than to terrorize. Now, when they do come home, and if Hamas leaves and allows for a rebuilding of Gaza, anything is possible. And then let's come on again and think about where we can go. But right now, Hamas and their allies and their partners are threatening to all of us in India and in Israel and in Europe and anyone who wants peace and thrives on life. And let's pray that in a couple of hours we'll see pictures like we saw yesterday of more grannies and children coming home and families
Absolutely.
being reunited. But know that it's a complicated days in Israel, complicated days for all of us, hoping for better ones.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
My pleasure. All the best.
An equally big welcome to you, Wael Awad, South Asia-based senior foreign journalist since 1979. He's covered wars in Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Kashmir, West Asia, and the Gulf. He's survived numerous attempts on his life when he was covering the conflict in Jaffna, Kargil, Afghanistan, captured in Iraq in 2003 when he was an embedded journalist with US troops. He did manage to escape. Thank you. He's also a former president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia in Delhi and is president, emeritus. So, Mr. Awad, if I can come to you, is Hamas reinventing itself? You've seen top leaders of the Hamas involved with a truce, which one here has ran into trouble several times. Hamas nearly called it off after the bombing of the Al-Shifa hospital by the Israeli Defense Forces. But then you have Ismail Haniyeh in Doha, you have Khalid Mashal, you have the former chief in Lebanon, Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah, Osama Hamdan, Khalil Haya, all on board. Many say they were, prompted to, because they wanted Palestinian prisoners, brought home. Thousands of Palestinian prisoners who are in Israeli jails coming home. So could you tell us something about what prompted Hamas to actually, talk to Qatar?
Well, thank you very much. Again, we are appearing in your program. The point here is very clear, Nina. Actually, if you look at the Hamas have been at the receiving end ever since it has been established, 1987s, and then when they have taken full control after the election, they won the election, but they were denied. So Israel made a siege on Gaza, and after which they are the right-hand wing of the Muslim Brotherhood organization, actually, of Egypt. So they have been strengthening themselves throughout the years, despite the fact that the Israelis using the policy of moving the loans, that they have been doing it from time to time on Gaza Strip in particular, where 2.3 million people are living in a concentration camp. and it has been besieged from the sea, from the ground, from the sky. So there was no passage except from the Rafah passage of Egypt. So there have been, 5-time attack and severe attack on Gaza. In fact, Israelis have carried out bombardment and carnage on the Palestinian, and a collective punishment for all the Palestinians who are living in Gaza.
But didn't Hamas expect something like that? I mean, you can't go attack a kibbutz and all the kibbutzes and take 200 people hostage and then not expect Israel to react in the manner that it did.
No, they were expecting a reaction. The only difference, which I was trying to explain to you here, is that this time Hamas decided to take the fight into the occupied territories. They have not allowed Israel to take the fight into Gaza. That's the only difference. The only difference where the world has woken up for this is because for the first time Hamas have attacked Israeli military camps. So they were anticipating, they were expecting, and they know that this is the time where they have to strike because of so many issues. One, because of the besieged. Second, because of the unemployment. Third, because they are desperately people living there have no hope of surviving in anywhere. And also because of the Abraham Accord, because of the discovery of the gas at the Gaza strips. Many issues have been taking place in the region. And in fact, one of the issues also the reconciliations among the Arab nation with Israel through the American pressure have diverted them from the Palestinian cause. And people thought that it is time to forget the Palestinian cause and they should end the resistance. So there was a plan to end the resistance in Palestine, where it is basically concentrated in Gaza, because West Bank and East Jerusalem is totally under the control of the Israelis forces. So there is no way that they can do. So therefore, that was the main issue why they have changed their strategy.
So basically, over the last 15, 20 years, there has been no move by anyone to make Palestinians or the Palestinian territory self-sustainable. I mean, there is a gas, field just outside Gaza. Why is it that nobody allowed the Palestinian Authority to be able to say that, we can tap that gas field? They don't have to be then fed, by trucks and, daily trucks coming in from Rafah and stuff like that. It's a pity, isn't it, that Gaza was not allowed to, develop and become a proper home, not a homeland, but proper state, if nothing else.
That's exactly is the point, because they are under occupation. So Israeli refused to allow them have the access of their own gas in Gaza Strip. In fact, they have signed an agreement with the Egyptian, and they are exploring the gas where it will go only for the revenue will go to the government of Israel and also for the Egyptian. There was nothing for the Palestinian. If you wanted to make miserable life for the Palestinian and you want to expel them, Nina, you don't make their life comfortable, right? So therefore, you will deny them all access to any kind of livelihood or any basic commodities. So how do you expect them to benefit from the gas when they are accusing Qatar money that it is bombed into Gaza for the weapon, for underground tunnels, for all this nonsense? Talk about it, but nobody talks. So therefore, it's a question of survival for them. They know that this is the desperate move they have carried out, and they know they wanted to change the paradigm of the war with Israel, and they have succeeded. So it is a humiliating action against the Israeli army, where they are doing a collective punishment against the Palestinians, and we know.
But aren't we back to square one? I mean, after the ceasefire is over, and after this, the fact that, they have these pawns, which is the hostages, once the hostages are released, or at least most of them are released, it will go back to square one. So Israel will continue to exact punishment on the ordinary Palestinians. And now I also wanted to bring in the fact that, Iran has sort of activated not just the Hezbollah, but the Houthis as well. I mean, there was no way that the Houthis had the intelligence, to figure out that the ship that they captured in the Bab al-Mandab on the Red Sea was owned by an Israeli, or even whether the ship was there. So isn't that worrying at all? The fact that, you have the Hezbollah also upping the ante, you have the Houthis upping the ante, and the Palestinians again, going to be living in rubble.
Listen, Nina, there is a very simple answer to your inquiry. First of all, if there is occupation, there is a resistance. So the existence of Hamas or Hezbollah came only after the emergence of Israeli invasion to Beirut, where we had them, and we had also the invasion of Gaza and the rest of Palestine, where Hamas has taken the lead as the resistance forces when Arafat and his PLO have decided to go for Oslo agreement, and they told the Israelis they wanted a peaceful solution when they were promised that within 5 years, the interim government, they will have a viable Palestinian state, which never happened, because we know who has been sabotaging the peace process on that. So having said that, I would say that Hamas, there is no question that you can wash out the Palestinian cause. There is a people fighting for their own country, for their own homeland. They're under occupation, they're under suppression, you call it whatever you want. So regional players are definitely going to play on the round, because Iran have made a strategic decision ever since Khomeini has come under Islamic revolution, that they wanted to create something called the regional balance between a nuclear Israeli state and the Arab state, where some of the Arab give up on the fight against Israel because they thought we cannot fight it. So they enter into the game plan with the strategic options and strategic vision that there has to be a solution to the Palestinian cause. And they have been supporting most of the resistance forces in Lebanon, in Syria, in Hamas, Palestine, inside even the Houthis. So when you attack one of these forces, definitely the other player will come on the ground. So the question should be asked to the Israelis: and the occupation and settlement, apply the UN Security Council resolution, and let us decide the future of peace and coexistence between nations. And then
will they allow the Palestinian Authority, some kind of overseeing Gaza? Will they bring the Palestinian Authority in, the Egyptians? Because the Egyptians are now talking about the UN mandate. They're talking about the fact that surveys now are showing within the Palestinians at all that throughout Palestine, not just West Bank and Gaza, among the diaspora as well, that 70% want a two-state solution, but nobody believes it will happen. 60% don't trust Israel's intentions. And there is growing support now for not just Hamas, but for Islamic Jihad, Izzuddin al-Qassam, and 90% distrust the Palestinian Authority. So should there be a new Palestinian leader, Mr. Awad? Do you think it should be the time to Marwan Barghouti, Mohammed Dahlan? These are the people who have...
Is it tomorrow, hypothetically, Israel finish Hamas, will they accept two-state solution? If you already demonize...
So you don't believe that they will accept one?
Mahmoud Abbas, dehumanize the Palestinian. I think the question should be asked for the Israelis that if you want peace, it's very simple to apply the peace, because most of the Arab country came with an Arab plan to apply it. So let us do it this way and let us finish it off. There is no question that this war will achieve anything. There is a mindset that the Palestinian wanted to expel them to Gaza, from Gaza to Sinai Peninsula or West Bank into Jordan. That is just simply annihilation of Palestine. So it's an existential cause here. Either we or you, or either we sit down together and live together. That's my answer. I have to.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Awad. I really appreciate you joining our conversation. Thank you, viewers. Please click on the Global Express icon on the New Indian Express to watch the show.